And we are live. The Detroit Pistons win their first ever NBA in-season tournament slash NBA Cup game as they beat the Miami Heat in the last seconds of overtime, 123 to 121. I'm Sean Murphy alongside my guy, Steve. Steve, I just want to start with one basic question about that game. And that question is, what the did we just see?
Two teams letting each other say, here, you take the game. And then at the end, Miami was like, no, you take the game.
It's like, no, I insist. You take the game.
Yeah, for sure.
That is one of the wildest end of game sequences I've seen in quite some time. There's a lot of this game that was just out of the ordinary. There always is whenever the Pistons and the Heat clash. You never really expect it to just go smoothly. And this game was certainly no exception. The Pistons were up by as much as 19 at one point. They blew that lead. And then coming out of the second half, they got another lead. And then in the final minutes of the fourth quarter, they blew that as well. And then the Pistons were, somehow able to keep it to go to overtime, somehow managed to hang in there till the very end. It looked like they were about to lose this game at home against the Miami Heat. But then with 1.7 seconds to go, Cade Cunningham inbounds the ball. Very beautifully thrown lob, backdoor lob to Jaylen Duren. And then we're still not even quite sure who. From what I'm seeing online, people are speculating and saying that it was Eric Spoelstra, which, if that's the case, that is perhaps one of
shocking.
That is shocking, considering he is one of, if not the best coach in basketball, and he's on the list of the best coaches in the history of the game. The of all the teams to pull the Chris Webber, which, by the way, I said this to you right before we recorded, how poetic that front center court Jalen Rose is there to witness his Detroit Pistons win off of another team pulling the Chris Webber. I mean, that's just, I did not have that on my 2024 bingo card, Steve. I'm not going to lie to you. And listen, the Pistons, if you would have told me that was going to happen, I thought the Pistons 100% would have been the team to do it. But fortunately, in this case, they did not.
Monty Williams still coaches this team? What?
Didn't Jaden Ivey do that at one point? Didn't he call a timeout when the Pistons didn't have one? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that happened too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that happened. I think it was his rookie year. But anyway, the Pistons somehow managed to pull out that game. Now, I will say, there's a win is a win, and you take what you can get. But for all intents and purposes, we should be talking about a Pistons loss here. Like that's probably what should have happened. You know what I mean? Like, even in the fourth, if you were to combine the fourth quarter and overtime, the Pistons were outscored 39-32, right? Like they came out, and in the first and the third quarter, they played really well. I think you see the difference between a young team that's still learning, its way around the league, and a established team with a culture in the Miami Heat. Like the Heat came out a little sluggish, but by the end of the game was when they were playing with their highest intensity, was when they were playing their best basketball, was when, up until the very end, they seemed to have their focus and were executing at a pretty high level. Whereas the Pistons, it was kind of a flip. They started out strong, but as the game went on, the execution, everything just started to flip. They were really good in the turnover margins. I believe they only had 8 going into the fourth quarter, and they more than doubled that in those final minutes and in overtime. In particular, Cade Cunningham had a really rough final few minutes in the fourth quarter, and in overtime finished with 7 turnovers. I'm as big of a Cade Cunningham believer as it comes. I still think that he can be one of the elite players in this game, but it is something that we have seen too many times now to not just acknowledge that this is a real problem, and that this is something that if not addressed, will continue to put the Pistons in a difficult position and could potentially cost them games. And if you're talking about, again, I've talked about this before. If you want to look at the difference, what separates a Luka from a Cade Cunningham, what keeps Cade from getting to that level, it's strictly taking care of the basketball. It really it majorly comes down to that. Steve, what are some of the things you took away? What did you see as far as that final minute execution there from the Pistons?
I agree. Cade needs to take better care of the ball, but the team needs to help him out too. Why, oh, why, oh, why are we always seeing him in these isolation situations like that where he's having to dribble into 3 or 4 guys? And
Right.
they talked about it in overtime too, where Haywood Highsmith is just whacking him on the arm. They drive in, they whack him on the hand a couple times. He never gets the whistle. Bam Adebayo is clearly holding Cade's hand down on that jump ball. Like
Yep.
those little things, I mean, they just have to go for preparing. Like, okay, we're not going to get these calls, forget it. But I'm pretty sick and tired of seeing Cade just having to create like on his own. Whereas
I
we
agree
all
with
know
that.
how does he work best is in pick and roll. And again, Jaylen Duren, what in the world does Jaylen Duren do if he's not setting screens on offense? Right.
Right.
And if you're just going to have him stand in the dunker spot or whatever, you're asking his defender that, oh, guess what? You don't have to guard this guy. Then he's not going to set a screen. He's not rolling. He's not going to be a lob threat as well as he would be setting the pick and roll or other spots. So I think that's a
Mhm.
big fix that, like, I hope the coaching staff can do is stop putting Cade in these isolation situations. Yes, he's good at it, but when you have guys like Jaylen Duren in there, and if you did have like a Ron Holland or somebody else that the defense doesn't respect, then they're just going to sag off them. And that's why you see Cade driving into traffic and things like that. I do also think, like, looking at this, again, I'm the Jaylen Duren hater. I wear that. Sure. The other thing that I looked at is 60 points in the paint. The Pistons gave up 60 points in the paint. Sure, Beef Stew is part of that, but like Duren's crunch time defense was just if I
When
had any hair left on this head, I'd be pulling it out, like making
when
dumb fouls on Bam Adebayo at
I
the
was
end.
gonna
It's
say
just like you
when
can't be
when
doing that, man.
Jalen Duren was guarding Bam Adebayo, just objectively speaking, he did anything he wanted. Like
Yeah,
just
yeah,
the entire night. And listen, it's not like that's entirely a shock because Bam Adebayo is one of the best bigs in the league. He's known for his defensive prowess, and I think anytime you see him play the Pistons, it's a stark reminder that he's heavily underrated as an offensive player. The fact that he's also potentially adding a three-point shot to his game is terrifying. He was already a really damn good player. But I think it's another thing of we Bam Adebayo is a guy that Jalen Duren is compared to a lot. And I think in order for Jalen Duren to start reaching that type of level or to, actually earn that comparison, for lack of better terms, is we have to start seeing those improvements in his game incrementally over time. Like the thing that's amazing with Bam Adebayo, like I just mentioned with his 3-point shot, but every single year he comes back, there's something new to his game. He gets better at something. And like year over year, he's just like he's a completely different player than he was 5 years ago. Right. And so when I look at Jalen Duren, like I saw someone like post on Twitter, like a lot of times Jalen Duren just looks like the same player as when he was a rookie. And I can't say I disagree. And like I get that he's missed, certain like some stretches, due to ankle issues. I get that, he hasn't been able to like fully string together a lot of games over an extended period of time, but he's played enough. And like he's still very young, but it's not like he's inexperienced or doesn't have reps or doesn't have those, just like doesn't have that experience. And so that again, it's just to me, it just continues to be the story of like the young player to watch as far as where does he go from here? Because if you're looking at the live Vegas odds of which young Pistons player is the most likely to be moved, Jalen Duren's probably the leader in that house right now.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, if you listen to somebody like Sam Vecini, he said this in the summer, and there are a couple other people like Zach Lowe, and I think it was Danny LaRue and the guys from the Real GM Radio when they did the like Central Division preview. They all said the same thing of like Duran's good, but you just said it too. I haven't seen him really like take progression anywhere, and the
Mhm.
defense just continues to be really bad. I'm glad he made the lob play at the end. That's the big thing that he brings to the offense. But I mean, we also need to think about it. Cade made Marvin Bagley look good. Cade made James Wiseman look good. Like Cade does that. That's his favorite pass.
Right.
With some of the role players on this team, like you got to remember, even though you might like the player, they're a role, they're not a player. Like you should be looking to upgrade at every position because this team still has a long way to go. And yeah, you would want it sucks because we've been burned so many times on giving up on young guys, right?
Right.
And then they go somewhere else and get better. But as I've said before on my pod many times, I'm retiring they're young to everybody on this team because people try and bring that up too of like, oh, Duren's played for 3 different coaches in 3 different years. It's like, yeah, you know who else has played for 3 different coaches in 3 different years? Jaden Ivey. You know who else has played for 3 different coaches in 4 different years? Cade Cunningham. You know who else has played for 3 different coaches in 5 different years? Isaiah Stewart. And those guys continue to like add and do different things, whereas Duren's the one when you apply, just objective criticism, objective breaking down their game, Duren's the one that continues to stand out where it's like, come on, man, you got to show more.
I also just don't think that, that excuse necessarily applies the same in the world of basketball as it does. Cause
Yeah.
I think that's a real stigma in football because when you bring in a new coach, you're really overhauling your system, your scheme. Like that is a complex change that brings a lot of different things. Learning a NFL playbook is way different than learning a basketball playbook. And not to say that, basketball coaches don't have an important job or that, that they don't have their own different systems and ways of doing things. But especially when you're talking about Jaylen Duren, I don't think year over year with each coach, I don't see much or really anything that he's getting asked to do that's completely different under each regime. Like he's still playing a lot of drop coverage. On occasion he's switching. They're still putting the ball in his hands and seeing what he can do as a playmaker. It's not like that's something that they didn't do when even Monty was coaching this team. So to me, like I agree with you from the sense of I just don't buy into that narrative because again, you're not really being asked to do much of anything different, in my opinion. So, and again, like you said, we've seen multiple players on this team thrive and continue to improve under those same extenuating circumstances. So again, I just think he's someone to continue to watch. Isaiah Stewart, when he did come in, there were moments where I thought he played really well tonight. Especially like, just there was that breakup of the Bam lob late down the stretch, that Duren was just beat on multiple times. Like Isaiah Stewart, you can see him actively adjust and change the way
Yeah,
he's
and trying
approaching
to
things.
time his jumps at the right time because he knows
Yep.
he's not the vertical threat. He can't get up there, but he knows how to use his long arms to disrupt. And there were some where I'm like, I don't think he got it, but I think the wind of his like swiping at it at least altered it enough. Because I know there's one in Khalil where it's like it doesn't look like he got it, but like you said, he disrupted it enough.
Yeah, this year feels to me like the year that like people are finally starting to understand the impact of an Isaiah Stewart. And
Yeah,
if there's any silver lining, I'm glad that people are starting to realize that.
yeah, I mean, I will agree with Case Cracked here in the comments, not letting Stu Pappas hurting. Hopefully that changes. That we
Yeah.
get a guy like Ausar back to crash the offensive glass. I agree with that. I mean,
Mhm.
Stu is still averaging like 6 points per game, like 5 points per game. They're just leaving too many points on the court if that's going to be like his role.
Yep.
And I've said it on my podcast. I think Stu is locked in as like a Kevon Looney type player, and that's like high praise.
Kevon
Integral role
Looney's a
player to
great player.
multiple championship teams, right? He can play with Draymond Green, even though neither guy can shoot because they do a lot of hustle things and they make it absolutely impossible for guys in the playoffs too, even to do it. So I do think Stu, even without like the 3-point shot, it would just suck because he spent so much time developing that for it not to come in. But man,
Yeah.
he just does so many different little things that don't always show up on the stat sheet. But I
Yep.
do think he's crashing the glass a lot better. He's gotten better as a rebounder. And there have been some games now too where he's been pretty good passing the ball as well. He had some multiple
Mhm.
assist games with Duren out, so I think the DHO stuff is starting to come around a little bit more. Him and Duren both got to work on not turning it over so
Yep.
much. That's the one where I'm like, look at the turnover rate. I'll continue to tell this to everybody. Look at turnover rate. Stu and Duren's turnover rate consistently remains over like 21%, which is absolutely inexcusable for how little they touch the ball.
Right.
And it's like mainly been aimed at Stu because he's so many passes slip through his hands. But again, look at Duren's too, because Duren turns it over just as much and sometimes more than Stu. And I think their turnovers are much more damaging than Cade's, because Cade is going to continue to get usage and he'll make up for it with rebounds, he'll make up for it in assists, he'll get hot at certain points. Whereas with Stu and Duren, they're just finishing plays. So if they fumble a possession, that's just lost and they're not really doing anything other than crashing the glass.
Per cleaning the glass, Jaylen Duren currently has a turnover rate going into this game, because I don't think it's updated as of yet. But going into this game, he had a turnover rate of 25.6%, which is in the 1 percentile, meaning towards the bottom of the league. So you are absolutely right. And even like in the last couple of years, he's been at 17.8, 17.9%. So for a big, he turns the ball over a lot. So definitely, like you said, it's just, especially as someone, that does have the passing capability, if that is something that they want to utilize, it's something you have to really keep an eye on. Now, guys that I thought played really well tonight, I thought Malik Beasley is, just continues to be a guy that steps up for this team when they need scoring, when they need like a stable presence. I thought Tobias Harris had perhaps his best game in a Pistons uniform since returning to Detroit. I think, again, even though Tobias, he went 2 for 4 from 3 tonight, it's not like he's like blowing the world away from beyond the arc, but he's certainly.
But that's more than his career average. I mean, 4
right.
or more is more than his career average, which is what he should be shooting.
Yep. I mean, it was a good performance from him. Tim Hardaway Jr. was playing really well too before. Just, I do just feel, remiss just to say prayers up to Tim Hardaway Jr. and, just hope that he's okay. Steve, I've been watching basketball a long time. I've seen a lot of injuries. That's up there as one of the scariest I've seen.
That's why you got to call a foul on him though, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, clearly the terrible, just a terrible call, but also, just it's one thing when a guy, gets his head hit in like football or anything like that. When it's basketball and he has no head protection, he got the knee in the back of the head and then he slammed it on the ground on top of being elbowed in the face. He had to be wheeled out. I will say, I get that a broadcast is trying to fill airtime. I do think they replayed that like way too much. And, I also get that his dad is a public figure and is a celebrity. He's someone that played the game himself. I don't know if you got to show him walking back to the locker room to go see his son. I just don't know if you have to. Again, I get that it's difficult to fill that airtime, but it's just, to me, just not the, probably not the move. I will say, perhaps the thing
if I can say one more thing about that, though. Sorry, Joel, cover your ears. I know it's going to make you upset. But our guy, Halbridius, sent out a tweet saying THD took a ton of punishment there. And that should have been a BAM foul before any of it happened. No calling the obvious offensive foul led to a scramble that absolutely should never have happened and a really bad injury. That is on the refs. It is 1,000% on the refs. And he's correct, because right before that, BAM elbowed Tim Hardaway Jr. right in the face in front of everybody, and he goes down. And if they call that, then none of that happens. Again, continuing to harp on our point of the officiating, Joe, fix the officiating.
Yep. And the other thing I'll say as well is right before they went to commercial break for the first time with the injury, you could just start to hear a Jared Goff chant in the Little Caesars Arena. And listen, I am a Lions fan. I love Jared Goff. I get that the chant started as this good-hearted thing. Read the room. And also just like I just, it's run its course. Like there is a time and a place, and neither of those were that moment or that place. So, I would hope to think that was a very small minority of the crowd, but it was audible enough for it to come through my TV speakers. And so I just
it's
feel
probably the same people chanting, "We want Bronny" in that Laker game.
Yeah, for sure. And that one's a little bit more understandable to me, but like the Tim Hardaway, like that was just stupid for a lack of better terms. That was just really stupid. So, I think it probably, I'm not a doctor, but I think it goes without saying that Tim Hardaway Jr. is probably going to miss a bit of time probably has a concussion, if I were to guess. I mean, just the impact,
Yeah,
and it took him a while to get up from the court, but really it's not even about when he gets back on the court, honestly. It's just hope that he's healthy and hope that he's okay. Certain things are bigger than basketball, man, and that's just one of those ones where I just hope that doesn't have any long-term implications for him. He's
absolutely.
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, get well, Timmy.
Yeah, I mean, he's to his credit, he's been playing good basketball since coming back to Detroit. He's been a good presence for the locker room, and you just hate to see that to anyone. Pretty brutal
Yeah.
injury to Nikola Jovic for the Heat as well. I'm not a doctor, but that almost certainly looked like a broken nose to me.
Oh yeah, that was just unfortunate getting tussled up, and he
Yep,
Beasley was it right?
yep, yep. Like that was pretty gnarly. His nose was literally doing like an L. It was so.
He
Ugh.
went down Nikola
Like
Jovic. He came up Owen Wilson. So
yeah,
if
yeah.
you want to know what it looked like,
Yeah, he came up saying, "Wow." Oh my gosh.
went to go crash a wedding, I guess.
Yep.
If we can go back to the comments though, Nuggies here said, "Are we counting this as a Jaden Ivey redemption game from last game?" I don't know. That's necessarily a redemption game, but I think it's still continuing his progression, specifically on defense. Because I think at the end of regulation, he did fantastic work
Mhm.
on Tyler Hero, where he just forced him into things that he did not want to do, forced him into a tough shot on the baseline, which he did not want to take. I mean, he ended up fouling out of the game. But again, that goes back to my criticism on Duren, because I think a lot of times Ivy and Tobias in particular have to make up for a lot of the stuff where Duren's not doing the switch, or not rebounding. And at the end of the game too, with that Bam, I think is the one where Ivy fouled out in overtime, where the
Yep.
ball went under Bam's feet, and Tobias and Ivy are frantically scrambling for it, whereas Duren's just sitting there watching them. So kudos to Ivy. I think Ivy continues to do a lot of little things, and Karen gives great second effort on defense. I think there were 10 possessions tonight where I was like, oh boy, dude, you got cooked there. And then he runs back in and just on second effort and
Yeah.
disrupts the shot.
I think there were moments where he slipped up on defense, but when it mattered, he played pretty solid defense, especially that shot attempt that Hero had. I believe it towards the end of regulation, Ivy, kind of locked up really well. On top of that, he didn't really shoot it very well from beyond the arc, but when he did hit his three, it was a pretty big one. At the time, it felt like that was the dagger, and that was going to be the end of the game before the collapse started with all the turnovers. I will say Cade and Ivy didn't have the most, scoring wise, but they before all the turnovers, they did combine for 16 assists. They did do a good job of running the offense and of finding, guys and giving them opportunities again before the turnovers. So, again, I still think there's a lot to like. And I wouldn't say it was I don't think we'd have to call it a redemption game, because that was probably Ivy's one bad game of the season thus far. But I think it was certainly a good bounce back game for him for sure.
Well, I think
Um,
Ivy's learned probably from Cade, okay, if my shot's not falling, I need to rebound. I need to get other guys involved. 9 rebounds, 7 assists. And then again, all the defense. I think that's the bigger part for Ivy, is realizing how to play as a complete player, not just this offensive scoring machine.
yep. Case cracked with the 279 Canadian money. Thank you so much, my friend. Ausar is about to ignite this team when he back. So to answer your question, I think that it's probably going to at least be another 2 weeks. And the reason why is because Asar, it's one thing to be in shape, which don't get me wrong, he's still been working out. He's been in the gym all the time. He's been at practice, but not been able to participate. It's a whole other thing to be in basketball shape and to be ready to play in NBA action. And I think that they're going to want to at least give him a couple of weeks of opportunities to go through a full shoot around, to go through a full practice, to be able to get some 5-on-5 scrimmage time, just to be able to get his feet under him. Because the reality of it is, and I know this isn't the fun answer, but this is just the truth. I mean, after going through what he did just go through, there's literally no reason to rush him back. Especially just the fact that it is a serious thing, going through blood clots and stuff. So I was looking at the schedule earlier. We actually talked about this on the episode of the podcast that drops tomorrow. But if I'm just eyeballing the schedule and looking for days that make sense to me, December 3rd and 4th, they have a back-to-back, and then on the 7th, I believe they have a home game before before they kind of have like a week and a half off because of the NBA Cup knockout round and things like that. I think he would probably come back right before that cutoff point. But to me, it's like the very earliest would be like at the very end of November. But like, yeah, I would think they would want to give him at least 2 weeks to be able to get reacclimated, get back into the lineup, and just for lack of better terms, make sure he's 100% ready.
I have a question for you about Ausar.
Yeah.
When he comes back, who goes out? Because somebody's got to lose minutes.
Yep. I think you see kind of like a mixture of guys. Like I don't think it's like one person that you see like their minutes fully cut down. I think probably the most obvious one is going to be Ron Holland. I will say I think he is someone that you're going to
Which would be a shame, though. Which would be a shame.
Which is exactly, I still think he's someone that you're going to want to find spots in the rotation for because I think he's been playing above expectation. I think he's actually playing really good basketball and is only getting better as it goes on. So
they should have used him more tonight on Hero. Just if he fouls Hero, who cares? It would have been better than him hitting all those threes.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. I think again, Ron Holland's shown a lot, and I think it's going to be hard to keep him out of the rotation. I saw someone mention Simone. I would imagine a couple minutes would come from him. I'd imagine Tim Hardaway Jr. his spot in the rotation would naturally get cut down a little bit. I think you could even see it cut away from like Tobias a little bit as well, because like it does allow you to to like experiment with your lineup combinations, and you could even run more Tobias at the 5, and Ausar can honestly like run some 4 if need be and guard like guys that are like slightly bigger. I think it's not gonna be one like so. Long story short, I think it's gonna be a mixture of guys, but more than likely, most of it's probably gonna come from guys like Ron. But
yeah, I wonder if they cut like Cade a couple minutes, like Ivy a couple minutes here and there, and like they kind of whittle at some, and then Ron and Ausar kind of do the same things. But yeah, if Tim Hardaway's Jr. is going to be out for a while now, then I think that just kind of you just bump everybody up. You slot Ron or Ausar, excuse me, into like 7th, 6th man type of minutes, and then just roll from there. The one I will push against is the Fontecchio one. Sorry, case cracked. Anybody that can hit a 3-point shot, like they cannot take them out of here. I thought the 3-man unit of 3-point shooters with Timmy, Beasley, and Fontecchio worked great because if one of them wasn't hitting, then the other ones usually were doing a pretty good job. And I implore anybody, go look at Fontecchio's defensive tracking numbers on NBA.com/stats. It's among the best on this team. Like he's holding dudes to like 30 to 29% from 3. Like he's doing a really good job on defense, which is going completely unheralded. He's one of the few guys on this team that knows how to slide their feet on defense. I think him and Cade, like both of them, if you look at their defensive tracking numbers, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize like they're doing that well. I know before this game, Cade was like allowing guys 39.3% from the entire field. Like it's one of the best marks in the NBA.
4th in the league in like field goal percentage against.
Yeah, really locking dudes down. So I think Fontecchio adds to that. And yeah, I still believe in Fontecchio shooting too. I think just give him more shots. He'll come back around. Shooters shoot, man.
Yeah. Dude, by the way, just saw it on video. It was Eric Spoelstra who called the timeout.
No, he pulled a C-Web for real.
That is just crazy. I mean, I agree with you as well. Like I think people are overreacting a little bit too much to Fontecchio's shooting woes. I think it's important, like not making excuses, but it's important to remember the guy had a pretty chaotic offseason between rehabbing from his injury. He had surgery. He had a kid. He was, getting acclimated in Detroit. He's a guy that, is a veteran player, even though it's only like his 2nd or 3rd year in the NBA. He's played professionally overseas. He's someone that's a little bit older. So, and also JB Bickerstaff, he's talked about it as well of like, he's not going to go away from his shooters. Like he wants to instill confidence and show that he has faith in them. And he's very much, stood by that. And I think over the last couple of games, like Simone is starting to piece it together a little bit. He is shooting better. So, I do think that he is someone that you probably don't see as much. But I do think that like Cade's averaging 36 minutes a game right now. So that you'll certainly want to cut that down a little bit. Someone mentioned like Tobias is averaging like 32 minutes a game. Even for him, that's Like for someone that age, that is a
Yeah.
lot. So, I
I
do
mean,
think
I
go
do
ahead.
think like they should have like a conversation of like, you know what, on the second game of a back to back, let's roll out Asar and Holland lineups for like 20 to 25 minutes, together to like really see what we got here, to really see where they're at. Because they got to be realistic with themselves. Of like, they're not a playing team, and you need to start developing more of the younger guys. And that is the great thing about the vets on this team in particular. This is a diss at Burks and Bojan in particular last year, like Timmy and Beasley. I was like, I'm not so sure about these guys, but like nobody can complain about them because the only thing they do is shoot threes. Like they
Yep.
shoot threes and they create space for everybody else. So I mean, hopefully Timmy comes back, but they still have Fontecchio and a Beasley who you can throw in a second unit with a Ron and a Sar, and then have
Yep.
Ivy be the point guard run the second unit, or you can even have Tobias run it. Like that seems like a cool foundation and like something you should work on.
Yep. The three veterans that the Pistons added this summer, by the way, Tobias Harris, Mikhail Beasley, and Tim Hardaway Jr., they all combined for 50 points tonight.
Yeah,
So talk about the impact, from these guys. It's shown in almost every single game. Like they got veterans who can play, who are available, and are giving you a consistent contribution. Like, are these guys world beaters? No, but you know what they are? They're professionals, and that's what the Pistons need, especially when they are having those difficult games where they are, when the wheels are starting to fall off, so to speak, as the game goes down to the wire. Like that's when, in my opinion, those guys have really shown their value thus far. So,
yeah, and Tobias has done really great as a rebounder. Like he's come up with some
yep.
clutch ones. He came up with some clutch ones today, and his defensive numbers aren't fantastic, but he's trying. Like he's
Hmm.
consistently there, and he's consistently working on defense, which was a big, criticism of him in Philly. It just hasn't been the case here. Thank
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. And he's just been a great leader as
He
well.
just needs his 3 point shot to fall, and after his
Mhm.
3 point shot falls, then there's nothing to really complain about with him after that.
Yeah. And, the reason why, especially if we're talking about in the context of the NBA Cup, which I know fans throughout the league might still be getting used to, still wonder how important it actually is. I think this is something that's made for teams like the Pistons and like teams like the Atlanta Hawks, who just beat the Boston Celtics tonight. And Dyson Daniels just scored 28 points. Like this is for these young teams that are looking to take next steps and, show that they can grow, but also give them playoff like reps and something that's, of more consequence, because all 30 teams are not going to make the playoffs. So for these young teams like the Wizards, like the Pistons, like the Hornets, like the Raptors, which they'll play on Friday, like this is this is as tense of games you're going to get this season. And I think especially for guys like Cade, for guys like Ivy, like I think it's a great opportunity for them. But Steve, why are you holding back a laugh?
Or it's for the Lakers to be like, "Hey, we won a trophy last year too,
That too.
guys."
That too. Just to be able to put up another banner and say,
Yeah.
"Look, guys, we did it." 17 and a half question mark?
See, we got LeBron 2 trophies, guys.
Right. But like, I mean, but for the Pacers, like that was a great thing for them, right? And they made it to the
Yeah, yeah,
the
for
conference
sure.
finals. But you are absolutely right. It is also just to artificially add to LeBron's GOAT debate. I wholeheartedly agree with
Yeah,
that.
for the league, there's like no downside to it because they can have a young team come up and be like, "Oh, look at this talent we have coming up," or they can have 80-year-old LeBron be like, "Oh, look, he's still got it. See, it adds to his legacy," like you said, that kind of stuff too. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yep.
it is what it is.
Yeah. But
Have you thought about trades yet? Sorry, I don't want to like derail what you were going to say, but
no, you are absolutely okay. I've definitely started to, think of names that I think make sense. I wouldn't say I've started to put together packages or anything. I'm not the guy that's going to go on Trade Machine. If anything, I'm the guy that's going to laugh at trade machines. But I, I will say, like, I have thought of, I saw someone mention Markel Fultz, and, I don't hate that idea, if I'm being
yeah,
honest,
me
like
neither. Yeah.
for a backup guard. I've brought up before, the idea of calling Brooklyn about, Nick Claxton and seeing if you can, acquire him for assets. And, I still think,
Me and
especially
you, man. Me and you are on the same page there because they were starting Ben Simmons over him. I know he was coming back from injury, but even
Mhm.
then, that was weird.
Yeah. See, and I'm also a big fan. I've also been a big fan of Dorian Finney-Smith for a minute as well. So like if you could
Yeah,
somehow package it and get both of those
or
guys.
like Torian Prince from the Bucks, that kind of forward that
Mm-hmm.
just pops threes and plays
Mm-hmm.
tough defense. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah,
one I've thought about a lot is Indiana because they're so depleted at center that like Duren should seem enticing to them. Like Isaiah Jackson was in a contract here anyway, tore his Achilles, and then our guy Wiseman tore his Achilles. Right now they're operating with Siakam, Turner, and Obi.
mm-hmm.
Like Obi's another lob threat that can take the place of Duren, and then you can get somebody like Furphy, who's another shooter,
Well,
and
what
give
about
them.
Jarris Walker? Why the hell is he not in the rotation, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you can get Jarris 1000%, like do it, because he fits the scheme that JB is running perfectly, whereas Duren doesn't because they switch a lot of stuff. And Jarris is like the player you wish and hope that Isaiah Stewart could be. Like, not a lot of people like to throw out the Draymond Green comp, but many people were like, if anybody becomes the next Draymond Green, it's going to be Jarris Walker because he can pass, he can switch, and he can protect the rim, and he can shoot a little bit too. So yeah, I definitely, yeah, absolutely. Smaller ones too I've thought about is like Duop Reith, who is on the Pacers. Last year he had a really good year. He's also a stretch big. For some reason, they're not playing him. Even though he earned his spot last year, and like they need another guard, so like send Sasser there and bring
Mm-hmm.
do up Reed here, like something like that would also work. I do want to bring up Case Cracked again, where he says, "Come trade deadline, fans will want to keep Beasley and maybe THJ. We should trade them for assets, but it would be tough because of how much they're giving." Again, it's where I implore people think of them as a role, not as like a set player, because if you can get an upgrade from them, and I hate to pick on Timmy, but he's 31 years old. Like, is
Yep.
he going to be here in a year? Maybe. Is he going to be here in 2 years? Probably not. Is he going to be here in 3
Let him
years?
get
God,
out
I
of the
hope not.
hospital
I
first,
hope.
Steve. My God.
I'm sorry, Timmy, but you know what I mean. Like, as well as he's played, you still know, like, okay, this spot needs an upgrade.
Yeah, I will say I think it's gonna be I think it's gonna be hard. Like from a PR standpoint, it's gonna be a hard sell to trade Malik Beasley just because he really has he's really embraced Detroit and he's really embraced the Pistons culture. He's got like the 313 logo chain. He's got the custom shoes. He talks about
Yeah, but at the same time, if like New Orleans, has a
oh
fire sale and everything, right? They have a
oh I
couple
agree
players
with
like
you.
Herb
I agree
Jones,
with
Trey
you.
Murphy.
I agree. I'm just telling you what backlash will be coming. I'm just saying, knowing Pistons Twitter, that if there's anything we love, it's latching on to role players who are not that good in the grand scheme of things, but we make them to be a lot more than they actually are. That's the Detroit way.
Shout out Anthony Tolliver.
Shout out Luke Kennard. But it's again, in all seriousness, to round back to kind of put a bow on this game, so to speak. This could have very much gone a different way for Detroit. They are very fortunate to have walked out of this one with a win. And now, if you're looking at the grander picture of the in-season tournament for the Pistons, in my opinion, I think they have like a pretty manageable group here. Like Miami was a pretty difficult one. They will go on to they'll go to Toronto on Friday, which, with all due respect to Toronto, that's a winnable game as well. And then their next in-season tournament game will be the Friday after Thanksgiving. They go to Indiana, which is probably their most difficult game of this group because of how they've been playing. But I mean, opening night, that was a nail biter as well. The Pistons and Pacers tend to play each other pretty close. And then on the third, they host the Milwaukee Bucks, which who knows who'll even be on that team by then. I mean, they're 2-8. Like who
Hey,
knows?
Doc Rivers is still coaching, so they got a real good chance.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Doc Rivers and Darvin Ham, first team all shrug.
I mean, they got to be doing something good. At least they're doing that.
Dude, in all seriousness, like if they do fire Doc and they have to go get a new coach, do you realize I think they still have Budenholzer on their
Yep.
payroll?
Yep.
They have AJ Griffin that's going to be on their payroll. If they fire Doc, they're going to have him on their payroll. Like there's a chance the Milwaukee Bucks might have 4 coaches on their payroll at any given time. They're making the Pistons look pretty good in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, such a disaster there. You don't even know what to say. I think they just bet on so many of the younger guys they drafted to like somebody by this point step up into that role, and unfortunately, it just hasn't happened.
Right. And even if they go 4-0 because of the way that the in-season tournament is, the way the seeding works, it's not a guarantee that they would make it to the knockout round. It would be likely, but it's based on your record, but also it's based on your total margin of victory. That's how they do a lot of the tiebreaker stuff. So, the Pistons would need to win by a little bit more to like give themselves that cushion. But like
Yeah,
again, when you're talking about like, all right, like this is an actual opportunity, those are some of the things that like give a reason as to why. Speaking of the Milwaukee Bucks, this time tomorrow night, the Pistons will be playing the Milwaukee Bucks in Milwaukee. So we will get a real good idea of where they're at and how the Pistons stack up. But Steve, thank you so much for taking the time and talking to me about this one. I always love when you come on. Be sure people go check out what you're doing at Resball Pod on X, also on Blue Sky. You can find them at Resball Pod as well.
yeah. I just joined Blue Sky today, so
Yep. Same here. It's another app. It's another one. But thank you all to the people that are tuning in. Be sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel down below so you don't miss any of the content. We got another podcast coming out tomorrow. Be tuned. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you're subscribed.